Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Heroic Plus tier list video. Today we're going to be talking about healers and just our predictions on what healers are going to be the absolute best in a Heroic Plus setting in Wrath of the Lich King Classic. Again, just a few PSAs and a few things that I want to knock out right as I have your attention in the intro is one, this is fully speculative. Heroic Plus is not out yet. We have no idea how strong it's going to be, how difficult it's going to be. We don't know for sure yet if we're going to push keys or not push keys, but there are some things that we can infer and make assumptions on, and that's what we're doing in this video. Just to be transparent, the main reason why I'm making these videos on these tier lists is because I want to continue the conversation. I want us to continue to talk about Heroic Plus, continue to think about like what classes are going to be good in it, and just push the conversation so that Blizzard can hear us, so that we can hopefully get a Heroic Plus, which is exactly what the players want. So if you have any opinions on it, please just leave them in the comments below. That's where this conversation is headed. What makes this tier list different than any other tier list is this tier list is intended for Heroic Plus, which means it's a 5-man comp setting. So certain classes that bring extra buffs to a party are actually really valuable, where they wouldn't necessarily be as valuable in any other setting. We only expect one difficulty in Heroic Plus right now. If that changes, maybe this tier list changes. And in theory, you should be able to do Heroic Plus with any 5 people possible. It shouldn't be that difficult for you to do, and I really don't anticipate a timeline where we start looking for a group and people don't want to invite certain classes because, oh, that class sucks. I just don't think that's a thing. So let's jump right into it. And look, I know if you're looking ahead, you might see a Ret and Enhance down here. I'm probably going to get murdered for including them in this video, but I feel like I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And if you guys hate me for it, so be it. There's been a lot of, talk about this Ret Holy build. I know that Baron was pushing. I made a video on Heal Hance, and that kind of blew up. And I just want to talk about it. At the very least, like, why not have the conversation about it while I'm talking about all healers in a Heroic Plus setting? So we'll get to them at the end. Let's first start off in order, going with our Disc Priest. Now, Disc, oh my god, there isn't enough good things to say about Disc Priest, especially in Wrath of the Lich King. They're absolutely incredible. They have good cooldowns and do really good healing, and they make healing very anti-fun for every other healer because they are so good at their job with absorbs. This kind of default puts them in an S tier for Heroic Plus. They're extremely mobile and just do such good healing, especially in a 5-man setting, because a lot of the time you're just going to be spamming forward shield, and so your actual HPS output is pretty low unless you go all the way down to a 5-man setting where your penance then becomes extremely powerful, where it's not just healing one person from 0 to 100. It's healing one person from 0 to 100, which is accounted for 20% of your party rather than a small fraction of your party's health in a raid setting, for example. I think a cooldown like Paints Up is just going to be really good if we get into a situation where we know that our tank is going to be making a massive pull. And I think Divine Hymn is actually low-key slept on, especially in like a very hairy situation. One that might come to mind is the last boss in Heroic Halls of Stone. If that boss is being pushed for a long time, at the very end, there's kind of a lot of damage going out, and Divine Hymn just kind of is an instant win in that situation. I think what Disc Priest is potentially lacking, which might bring it from an S to an A tier, is its overall buffs. I don't think Divine Spirit is enough. I don't think Fortitude is really enough. I don't think the percent damage reduction is enough. I just don't love the utility and the buffs that they're bringing to uplift their party members around them. I just think that they do their job so well that they are kind of like an A+ or S tier healer. I'm going to go ahead and leave them in an S+, but I don't think that they will be there alone. Now, Holy Priest. Holy Priest is interesting because Holy Priest has always kind of been this very slept on healer just to begin with. Their output is phenomenal, and their toolkit is really, feels like on paper it would be phenomenal for 5-man. I think I'm inclined to lean to an A. I don't love the fact that you would intentionally go holy and miss out on having something like PI, which a Disc Priest is really useful to have a PI for if you're in a caster group. But perhaps if you're in a melee group, and perhaps if your tank is, for example, a DK or a warrior, I think Guardian Spirit is actually pretty solid. You could maybe foresee a wipe in coming, foresee a boss mechanic coming, or know that there's a big pull happening. And whether or not your Guardian Spirit actually saves your tank, it's going to increase healing output done on that tank. So I think a GS done well can actually be a really valuable tool. I think Body and Soul is another good thing for Heroic Plus. I think just increasing the pace of your party with Power Word Shield so that everyone gets a movement speed is solid. I think it's solid, and that's about the best I can give it. I think some people are like way too high on Body and Soul. I don't think it's game breaking. I don't think it's that good. I think if anything, it's solid. It's good. I just don't imagine that the movement speed from that is going to be too valuable outside of maybe giving your tank a bit of movement speed so that he can round up a big pull. But once that big pull has happened, everyone's feet are planted while they're killing it. Real quick before we move on to off of Priest, one thing that I really like about Priest is they just do some damage easily. And they don't have to sacrifice a whole lot to do it. Things like Holy Nova and Mindseer, their AoE options are instant cast, instant reward. You're instantly getting that damage out. There's no setup to it. Their dots on like any boss fight would be Shadow Word Pain, Devouring Plague. Really easy to get out. A Holy Priest could spend a Surge of Light proc on a Smite, instant cast Smite. All that damage is just instant. Every global boom, they can make a decision to do some damage to help their party out in one little way. They don't have to stand there and cast a lot, which I really like. I think the accessibility to damage is really good, thus making them one of the highest damage dealing healers, if that ever ended up being a necessary thing for your party. Now, Resto Druid. I think Resto Druid, in terms of healing output and value, is basically right up there with Holy Priest. And probably, yeah, they probably end up ahead of Holy Priest. The reason being is I think their overall is going to do more for a party than a Holy Priest will. I think Revitalize in the right setting is going to be really valuable. I think their mobility is just as good as a Holy Priest, if not better. I like having a battle res on a healer. I think that's extremely good. Hell, the battle res might even alone push them into an S tier. Having that in a Heroic Plus setting might be extremely valuable, as if you hit one bad pull and one person dies, that might be the difference in between you making that time or not making it. I think Innervate is a little underwhelming in Wrath. There's just not a whole lot of mana issues. I think you should be totally fine without Innervate, although bringing it is great. You get to have it. The rest of Druid probably doesn't need it, so it's a cooldown that he'd be using on a caster in his party. Most likely. And then, yeah, Tranquility is a solid cooldown. It's going to be, almost as effective as a Divine Hymn in a 5-man setting, so Tranquility is going to be big for any Harry situations as well. I think that makes Resto Druid really solid. Overall, I don't love their damage output per se. Not that they would be doing much to begin with, like any of these healers, but the fact that they have to shift out of Tree of Life form to do any damage and then go back into Tree of Life form is just pretty, dissatisfying for me and not exactly what I'm looking for. I think overall they're an A, and a solid A too. Resto Shaman. Resto Shaman is almost like the poster child to me for a healer in a Heroic Plus setting. To me, they are S tier and they are above Disc Priest. And it's funny because Resto Shaman in a raid setting is actually like one of your worst healers until way later in the game for sure. What's nice about Resto Shaman is it feels like everything that they have just adds to the value of a dungeon setting or of a 5-man setting because of the vast amount of buffs that they're bringing to their party. They can bring a Strength of Earth if you don't have it. They can bring Spell Haste Totem if you don't have any other Shaman. They can bring Bloodlust and Heroism. Holy shit. That's incredible to have on one person in your party, and it's not going to be a tank, so it has to be a damage dealer or a healer. And there just aren't enough Shamans in the world to go around to have a Shaman in every single Heroic Plus setting. I think that Bloodlust alone puts them in S tier. On top of the fact that I think their healing profile actually really fits a heroic setting too. Their biggest downfall... Sorry, let me turn that down. The biggest downfall of Restless Shaman is they're not very mobile. Now, how much does that mobility actually affect them in a 5-man setting? It's probably pretty low. I can't imagine that actually being something that is really going to deter them from keeping up with a party. There are ways around it. They have a couple instant casts with Riptide and their Nature Swiftness, but I think it should be totally fine. I think Restless Shaman might have some issues of mana, but that's easily covered up with a Manatide Totem. So I can't find any bad things about Restless Shaman. Hell, they can help your party kite. If you got into a really rough situation and you had to kite mobs, they have Earthbind Totem. They have Earth Ellie Totem. It's ridiculous. And the damage that they do is also easily accessible. Now, not quite as easy as, say, like a Priest, but they can start casting a Flame Shock Lava Burst on pretty much every single pack, and especially on every boss. They can Flame Shock Lava Burst and spam Lightning Bolt. They can do just solid utility here. I just think they're really good in this setting, and they basically are moving from like a C tier healer in a raid setting to an S tier healer in Heroic Plus, which is one of my favorite things about this whole experiment and this whole new feature, is that classes can move up a tier list based on what they're doing. So I just think the value here is just unbeatable. In fact, if anything, if you want to differentiate the two, you could put Disc down to the A and leave Resto Shaman in their own S tier, where they are just miles ahead of everyone else in terms of their value. Next up, we have Holy Paladin. Now, Holy Paladin, I was low on these guys prior. I definitely was, but I think I may have overlooked Holy Paladin a little bit. Now, Holy Paladin is our de facto S tier staple in a raid setting. It's a class that we want to bring 2 of in pretty much every difficult 25-man raid, but in 5-man, I'm going to have to put them here. They're in A tier. I can't put them in B. I'm sorry, I can't. I know this tier list looks crazy right now. I just can't put them in B tier. I think their output is just too good. They bring good buffs with Kings and Might. They can bring you a D-Sack. Hell, I think in terms of their damage, it's solid as long as they're getting in range. They can drop Consecrate. I think Holy Wrath is slept on because there's a ton of undead mobs in heroic dungeons. I think there's potentially even in like an unexplored meta where maybe they start speccing into Seal of Command instead of DSAC, because you don't need DSAC in a 10-man or a 5-man setting potentially. I think there's a lot that Holy Paladin has. Issues with mobility are made up for with Judgment of Light, Holy Shock, the instant cast Flash of Lights that you might get from your talents, and Purity of Lights, I think is what it's called, something like that. So they're actually really solid. They can keep up. I think Beacon is basically broken in a 5-man setting. I imagine a class like a Prot Warrior would really want to partner up with a Holy Paladin, for example. I think the two of them would be a really good combo. So I love Holy Paladin in a Heroic Plus setting, and I think basically every healer is going to be phenomenal in Heroic Plus setting. Now, let's talk about Ret, Holy, and Heal Hands real quick. Ret Holy, to me, it's a B healer. I don't imagine a world where you need the extra damage, truthfully, in a Heroic Plus setting, especially with our current assumptions that there is only going to be one difficulty. I think their output will be a little lacking in case things start hitting really hard. However, with the caveat that the content starts getting so easy that you can just outscale it with gear and there's never like updates to the difficulty of Heroic Plus, yeah, maybe perhaps it moves up into an A tier. But for now, I feel like B is a more comfortable place that I'm willing to put it. They're going to do solid damage. They're way more than any other healer for sure, except for possibly Heal Hands. And I think B is just like a comfortable place I'm willing to put a Ret Holy. And similarly, Heal Hands, to me, it's tough to say. I'm inclined to lean high B, low A for Heal Hands. I'd maybe put it high A or low A Reason for it is, again, just like the ret, I can't imagine any of that damage actually being useful. And the biggest issues that I saw with Heal Hands is its output when it's needed in a moment's notice. And that output, when it's lacking, is severely lacking. Do I think Heroic Plus dungeons will be so difficult that you need it? Hell, maybe not. Maybe the 4-piece bonus for Enhance in Phase 2 is going to be so good that they can continue to put out more heals. Maybe it's just the content is so easier. Maybe your block tanks are so geared that you don't need a full-on Resto Shaman. You can have them go Heal Hands. Maybe. Perhaps. It's too unknown for me to, like, fully sign off on putting Heal Hands in S tier, as I know that Heal Hands can be rough with low gear. And putting myself in the situation of having low gear, with everyone in the party having low gear, kind of matches the difficulty in my head of where a Heroic Plus might be with gear. I think I feel much better about putting them in a low A or even high B. So this is kind of where I'm sitting with healers for right now. But that's it, guys. I didn't really feel comfortable going into a Boomy, a Shadow, and Ellie, talking about their healing, as I feel like that areas, those areas have not been explored and really talked about a whole lot yet. And so until somebody starts really doing it, I have nothing to go off of on it. It would just be even more speculation on top of speculation. So I feel good about where this tier list is for Heroic Plus. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with any of this, please let me know. I'd love to hear it. Let's talk about it. I think it's a good, healthy discussion in my comments all the time. So I really appreciate all the support, guys. We got more tier lists coming out for Heroic Plus. We're going to do one on Melee. We're going to do one on Casters. And I have one that I already did on Tanks yesterday. If you want to watch the video on Tanks, there's going to be a link to the video in the description below. Thanks so much for the support. And guys, please keep talking about Heroic Plus. We need to talk about what we want to see on Heroic Plus. If we like the idea of there being one difficulty, if we like the idea of pushing keys, all these things. Just talk about it in the comments. We have to talk about it so that Blizzard knows what we want. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Love you so much, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.